Mark Healy, and I'm professor in civil engineering, and I'm also the director of undenominated engineering at NUI Galway. I have about 30 minutes thereabouts to give you a presentation about engineering at NUI Galway. And hopefully, if time allows, we can answer any questions that you may have. I suppose it's possibly best to make sure that your microphone is kept mute. And also as well, that if you have any questions, you can actually type them on the chat panel on Zoom. That might be the best way. And I'll try and get through most of them within the time. I have to log off at 1 o'clock sharp. But indeed, on the portal itself, on the main Open Day site, feel free to type in any questions in there. I will try and answer them there as well. So this is to talk about engineering at Inui Galway, and Inui Galway is one of the top 250 universities in the world, and we have a very, very long tradition of teaching and learning, spanning back for many years. This is the engineering building, and the building itself is newly constructed since about 2011 or thereabouts. And that's where our engineers study. And of course, also as well, actually, we're located really, really close to the city centre, about maybe 15 minutes thereabouts from the city centre. So that's also a positive for students. And what I'll do is that I'll possibly frame the presentation by kind of addressing a number of issues that you see written there. What do engineers do? Tell us about experience as a student, in other words, what courses you'll teach, and the skills you need, entry requirements. I'll talk about that specifically, and also a little bit about work experience, and a thing about something you may not be aware of called accreditation. And I'll talk finally then about the facilities at the university. So the very first thing is, what do engineers do? Well, I suppose really that they're builders and innovators, and they're kind of problem solvers. And in terms of the scope of what is within the programme at NUI Galway, it's actually huge. I'm a civil engineer. And whenever anyone thinks about civil engineering, they always think about the traditional buildings, roads, bridges. But if I told you that most of my work is involving in agriculture, greenhouse gas emissions, forestry, stuff that you never would associate with engineers, it kind of gives, I suppose, makes the point really about the fact that with an engineering degree, it's incredibly diverse, the amount of work that you can do and the areas in which you actually find yourself working on all sorts of materials in all types of environments that you may or may not be familiar with. And I suppose what I'll try and do over the next number of minutes is I'll possibly tell you very briefly about the programs and about some of the areas and some of the materials which engineers work with. We have a very, very strong emphasis on doing by learning or learning by doing. And what that basically means is that while you do spend a lot of time in lecture theatres, engineering is, after all, a professional degree. Really, it's a lot of emphasis placed on project work. So as you do move through your degree, and as you do particularly your fourth year, and indeed your fifth year, this is a 5-year programme at NUI Galway, you find yourself actually working on a lot of projects within research groups. And some of those projects can actually be quite large-scale projects. So it means that in essence, what you're doing is that you're translating the information that you can learn in the classroom into real life. And at NUI Galway, we put a very, very strong emphasis on that element of learning. So it's very much learning by doing. So that's engineers. I suppose really what we need to talk, and this is possibly what most of you might be interested in, is about your experience as a student. In other words, what are the courses on offer within engineering at NUI Galway? And what I'll do over the next number of slides, I'll just tell you broadly about the courses. The first one is my own discipline, which is civil engineering. And the pictures there attempt to capture the work of civil engineering. But with a lot of these slides, it doesn't actually capture everything to do with civil engineering. So as I said to you before, that while traditionally civil engineers have worked in very, very large scale infrastructure projects, a lot of times that engineers actually find themselves working in areas that you wouldn't necessarily associate with the work of civil engineers, such as I said, greenhouse gas emissions, agriculture, soil fertility, water or wastewater treatment. Of course, it's one of the central areas of civil engineering, but also as well renewables. There's a lot of emphasis being placed, particularly at the moment, in fact, on the whole circular economy and on the use of renewables, keeping stuff in the economy for as long as we possibly can. And indeed, that's very much central to the work of civil engineering. And of course, that's going to develop into the future as well. Electrical and electronic engineering, again, some photos there that captures everything from your iPhone in your pocket through to the car you drive, particularly in relation to the whole issue of automated cars and cars that are self-steering. Again, that would all be involving the work of electrical and electronic engineers. So if you are interested in technology, and if you feel that this is something that would be interesting to you, then definitely electrical electronic engineering may be something that's of interest. Mechanical engineering, as you may know, has been very, very popular for the last number of years. And mechanical engineering, again, is captured on the slides that you see there. Again, tidal turbines, wind turbines. Some for graduates, in fact, have gone on to work for Formula One. And everything, of course, to do with renewables is very much central to the work of mechanical engineering at NUI Galway. And kind of related to that, we have biomedical engineering. And if I were to kind of describe biomedical engineering, it's very much, I feel like, the engineering of the body. So everything to do with the heart stents, that would be biomedical engineers. But also as well, actually, it's worth saying that Galway City is one of the hubs in the world for biomedical engineering. So Medtronic, Craigana, Boston Scientific, these are all huge multinationals. They're located in Galway. And on account of that this course was set up some years ago to address the needs of industry. And again, biomedical engineering has also been incredibly strong at NUI Galway. And we also have energy systems engineering. Again, energy and resources and renewables, these all have been very, very central and are central, in fact, to all elements of engineering. This is a course that is set up primarily to address that need. And the idea of the course is that after your second year, you specialize in a denominated program with an emphasis on energy. So you would be an energy systems engineer, but you may have specialty in electrical engineering or mechanical engineering, or indeed civil engineering as well. And again, that also has been a program that has been incredibly strong at NUI Galway over the last number of years. So those are the courses that are on offer within NUI Galway. The next question, I guess, is really, what skills do you need? Well, I suppose really that if you're interested in the way things work, if you feel that you have an analytical mind and you like problem solving, I think that actually would be really much telling you that maybe engineering is for you. We say there if you enjoy mathematics, and it's possibly a little bit facetious, enjoy in inverted commas. I think that you don't necessarily need to be a genius at mathematics. However, you do need to have an aptitude for mathematics. In my own case, that I was pretty good at maths. Wouldn't have been the best at maths, but I would have been fairly good at maths. But I kind of like maths, like science, like the technical subjects in general, and kind of knew that maybe I might be interested. I kind of tended to point to engineering possibly as a discipline that I might be very interested in. And however many number of years I haven't looked back, I think it is a terrific profession, and I strongly recommend it. But certainly if you are more analytical in nature and you feel that this is something that appeals to you, then definitely I would consider engineering. And also as well, if you're interested in new technology, how things work, everything from phones to infrastructure to computers, transport, and so on. Again, this all would tend to point to engineering as a discipline. So unquestionably, the engineering jobs have been very, very plentiful. And in fact, actually, at the moment, we're in a situation where employers are actually calling out for graduates. They can't get enough of them because simply there aren't enough engineers out there at the moment to sustain the need for engineers. And also as well, of course, that engineering itself is the same anywhere in the world. So if you're an engineer in Ireland or an engineer in America or in Australia, you do essentially the same thing. So it's very transferable. In fact, actually, a lot of our engineers actually end up working in all kinds of areas all over the world. So what are the entry requirements? Well, the entry requirements are listed here, H5 and 2 subjects, H7 are no 6 and 4 subjects, including a laboratory science subject, and also as well H4 in the Leaving Cert mathematics or pass and special entrance exam. Now, just one little thing about the special entrance exam. It is held in August every year. It's actually more or less, I think it's around the time actually that you get the Leaving Cert results. And it usually is preceded by an intensive short course that usually lasts about a week. And finally, you do the special entrance exam. Now, one little thing on that, I guess I'd have to say is that this does not necessarily guarantee you a place in engineering. Over the last number of years, in fact, actually for as long as I've been director of undenominated engineering, it has been oversubscribed. In fact, actually this year we have of the order of around 300 or 310 to be precise, I think, students within engineering in first year. And on account of that, it basically means that if you do the special entrance exam in maths, you're automatically put onto a wait list. And in that case, if someone, say, drops out of engineering, which sometimes happen, obviously sometimes people, when they get the 0 points, they may or may not decide to choose that particular program. And so on account of that every year you do have sometimes people who just don't turn up. And on account of that, then that on that wait list, you will then be brought into engineering, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you get in there automatically. So I would say actually to all intents and purposes that you really would need to be doing honours maths Leaving Cert. I would nearly go as far to say that it's an absolute necessity. It really is an absolute necessity. And you do need to get a H4 in the Leaving Cert, maths as well. So does everyone do work experiences? Is the next question. Well, yes, actually, what's really great about engineering is that there is a work placement, and it's usually set up by the placement office. Although, actually, in some instances, people actually go and organise their own placement, which is always something that's very much approved of. But that being said, though, we always make sure that there's a quality control in the work placement. So if you're in placement, it doesn't mean that you would spend a number of months photocopying or making the cups of tea or coffee. It is kind of quality assured. So it means that you're actually getting real experience in an engineering environment. And it could be actually anywhere in the world, which is really great. In relation to that work placement, that depending on the course you do, whether it is a 5-year master's course, ME course, or a 4-year course, it will depend, that will have a big impact in terms of the length of time of your placement. Now, what that basically means is this, is that over the last number of years, really, a 4-year degree no longer cuts it, particularly within engineering. We're now at a 5-year ME in engineering, so that's a 5-year master's course. However, during that period of time, students, for one reason or another, may opt out of that 5-year course, and they're perfectly entitled to do. We don't encourage it, but they're perfectly entitled to do so. So in other words, they'll finish up after 4 years with a BE in engineering. Well, the impact of that on work placement, and even actually some of the courses that you do, is fairly large, to be honest. If you do a 4-year work placement, if you do a 4-year degree, my apologies, you will do a work placement of about 3 months, give or take. If you do the 5-year ME, you will do an 8-month work placement. So it's obviously very substantial, the difference between them. And also as well, actually, those placements are actually all paid as well. So it has all advantages, I guess, as well. So that's obviously very good. And the amount of companies and the number of companies, it is huge. This is just a very, very small taster of some of the companies that work with engineers and engineering students. Everything from Tobin's, Ryan Hanley's, they're located here in Galway. In fact, actually, I think that most of the companies, in fact, that you see on this page here are all actually based in Galway. So there's any number of consultancies and quite large companies that actually work in Galway as well. And obviously our students are kind of encouraged to go and work with them. Are the programs accredited? Well, the short answer to that is absolutely yes. And I would say one thing, and this is something again that you may not be aware of. The body that is the professional organisation for engineers in Ireland is a body called Engineers Ireland. And a very important thing for a lot of universities and institutes of learning in Ireland is to get accreditation for their programs. Some programs have full accreditation, other programs do not have accreditation. But at NUI Galway, our programs are fully accredited by Engineers Ireland. Now, this is actually really important because if your program, wherever you may choose it, is not fully accredited, it could have a little bit, quite a lot of impact on the quality of your degree and how that degree is interpreted both here in Ireland and around the world. And our programs in engineering at NUI Galway are fully accredited by Engineers Ireland, which means that you'll be able to travel around the world, work as an engineer, and also as well in time hopefully become a chartered engineer or a fellow of Engineers Ireland. So that's obviously very important as well. And then finally, what are the facilities like? Well, I kind of hinted it at the top of the slides, really, that we do have terrific facilities at NUI Galway. The engineering building was constructed in 2010 and it was opened in 2011. And it's if you're familiar with Galway City, it's if you're driving up the Quincentennial Bridge, if you look to your left, if you're coming from the Newcastle side, or if you look to your right, if you're coming from the Headford side, you will see this very, very large building on the skyline, and that is the engineering building. It's covered with glass in the front. It's a very, very state-of-the-art building. What's really great about this building is that it has state-of-the-art research facilities and also as well teaching facilities, but also as well crucially for you as students. It means that you are located in the same location in many universities in Ireland and indeed around the world. It's quite frequent that students have to travel from one side of the city to the other side of the city to take certain lectures. In the case of Galway, it's all based within the one building, and that's actually really impressive. But also as well, and this is really important just to bear in mind, is going back to the slide I had a little earlier on kind of learning by doing. Well, at NUI Galway, and particularly within engineering at NUI Galway, we're incredibly research intensive. And you might say, well, why is this important to you as a student? Well, the reason it is important to you as a student is that all our lecturers and professors are all publishing all the time. They're all doing research, sometimes very, very large, world-class, massively funded studies. And it means basically that that experience is actually feeding into the material that they teach, and more importantly, how they teach it. And even better for you, it means that as you progress throughout your degree in your fourth year, and particularly in your fifth year, it means that you'll be then working on these large EU funded projects, national funded projects, and you're getting experience really at the cutting face of engineering. And that's something obviously just to bear in mind. So it means that it's a very dynamic learning environment. And also as well, another thing, which is also very important, from a social point of view, it means that you're meeting colleagues in other disciplines within engineering. When I was a student here in the 1990s, we were in the engineering building. We only spoke to civil engineers. But if you're in the one building, it means that, say, as a mechanical engineer, you might be talking to a civil engineer or biomedical engineer, electrical engineer, or an energy systems engineer. So it means that there's learning happening all the time. Even if you may not actually realize it, it is actually happening all the time. And that's something obviously to bear in mind. Our prospectus is obviously available on this day, and also as well that if you go on to the web pages, those web pages, inuigalway.ie, are normally operational, but as you may or may not have heard in the media over the last number of days, that there has been a cyber attack on the university, but hopefully those will be operational within the next year or so. So I think actually that concludes my presentation. I'll stop the share. And indeed, if anyone has any questions, I would encourage you, possibly it might be best actually just to type them out. That might be the best thing. Yes, someone asked there, Caroline, hi Caroline, someone asked there, will this presentation be recorded? Yes, actually, the presentation has been recorded at the moment, in fact, and I guess that it will be available presumably on the portal that you're accessing this on at a later stage. Another thing that I must just mention, and it's a very important thing just to mention, in fact, is to do with a course called Undenominated Engineering. Now, I took you through there all the denominated programs, but denominated programs are one thing, but undenominated programs are actually really important. And I'm the director of Undenominated Engineering. Now, what that basically means is this. It means that in your first year, you go into a program called Undenominated Engineering. And in that program, you are taking exactly the same classes as your other colleagues. The only, and it's a major advantage of it, in fact, is this, that at the end of the year, you will be able to decide which program that you're interested in. So if you're a non-denominated engineer, and by the way, actually, most people enter into engineering through undenominated engineering. But if you are a non-denominated engineer, that throughout that year, you'll do a course called Fundamentals of Engineering. What that basically means is that for 3-week periods of your time, you'll have lecturers and professors coming in from different disciplines to talk to you about civil, talk to you about mechanical, and so on and so forth. And it basically means then that at the end of the year, that you will have to make a choice. And in fact, actually, it's the one thing that really you have to do that year. The choice that you make then will basically be for one of the denominated programs. So in other words, you can choose a denominated program going in from undenominated engineering, but also as well, if some of those denominated programs are higher points, you are not restricted by the points of entry. So if you got into undenominated engineering, you will get your choice of a denominated program for the second year. So it's something definitely important to bear in mind. And actually, most of the students, I would say, the vast majority of students enter into undenominated engineering. So I'd strongly recommend that. Someone asked questions about the points that are from last year. Well, I suppose I do have the points here on my phone, I think. Now, the one thing I would say about the points from last year is that they were very, very elevated on account of COVID. Just to give you a sense of it, undenominated engineering was 522 points. And then the points went up to a maximum of 555. Now, it's not normally that high, but on account of everything that happened, there was a lot of grade inflation, and definitely that found its way through into the CEO points, I guess. But again, it may not be necessarily indicative of what may happen next year. Wishing us about the different engineering options in Inui Galway. Well, I suppose actually might be best actually in the interest of time, basically just to say that this is going to be recorded, and I guess that this presentation will be available on the portal. And at the very start of the presentation, I talked about the different denominations, I guess, I suppose broadly it's civil, mechanical, biomedical, electrical, and I possibly have missed out one or two things, and as well, of course, on denominational engineering. But indeed, actually, you'll see that on the presentation. Cheryl says, can you say something about the entrance exam? Well, other than the fact that there is no entrance exam other than the Leaving Cert, but there is a special entrance exam in mathematics. Perhaps that's what you're talking about. It's actually very, very similar to your Leaving Cert maths paper, I guess, is the short answer to that. And again, prior to that there is, I think it's a week-long intensive course that basically more or less is if like a grind school to enable you hopefully to do the exam and to do quite well in the exam. But as I said to you as well, that because you pass the special entrance exam in mathematics, it does not guarantee you a place into engineering. I would nearly go as far to say is that really you need to have honours maths, I would say, to do engineering. You may get in with the special entrance exam, but it's not guaranteed, and it depends on a number of factors. You're put onto a wait list and you might get lucky or you may not get lucky. Someone as Caroline asked, surely the great inflation from 2021 will have a negative impact on entry requirements again in 2022. That could well be the case. Again, it's very, very hard to say. I suppose that, Caroline, to be honest, that your thoughts on this would be just as valid as mine. That could well be the case. But to be honest with you, I honestly don't know what may happen with that. It's a bit of crystal ball type stuff, I suppose. So sorry, I can't be more direct on that. What is the max amount of students accepted into the undenominated course? I'll ask. Well, to answer the question, I suppose that again this year that we are absolutely at capacity within all the engineering courses at I think about 300 or 310 odd people. We simply can't take any more. And in terms of the courses itself, it's largely, I suppose, because students actually take classes and all in the same kind of lecture theatre, and that lecture theatre has a certain capacity. It basically means that in any given year, some courses are a little less popular than other courses. It means then that, we see kind of more people then entering into extra spaces in other courses, if that makes sense. But I would say that, to put it this way, that out of the 300 odd students that are this year in first year in engineering, I would think of the order of around 200 of them would be undenominated engineers. So the vast majority actually do undenominated engineering. Say you get a H1 in maths in the Leaving Cert. So again, that's honors maths. If you do honors maths, do you have to sit the special entrance exam? No, you don't. The special entrance exam is only if you, I think, either fail the higher level maths. In other words, if you don't get up to the level that's required. Or alternatively, if you're doing the lower course maths for your Leaving Cert, then you will have to do that. But if you do honours maths and if you hit the criteria, in other words, if you get over that threshold of whatever it was, H4, whatever that Simon Old guy, so I don't remember that from my day, it used to be A's and B's and C's. But if you basically hit the level that's required, the threshold, you don't have to do a special entrance exam. So I don't know whether that concludes the questions. We have another 3 minutes or so left. Again, if people have any questions on any other element of the course, feel free to drop me an email or even to give me a call. My name is Mark Healy and I'm in civil engineering. And if you do a quick Google of me, Mark Healy in NUI Galway, you will find contact details for me. And feel free to give me a shout at any time to ask any additional question. Thanks, Caroline. Are there many students from Inui? Very difficult to meet points with A levels. Yes, we actually do get students from Northern Ireland, and I think actually that there is a URL set up specifically for them. If memory serves, I think it is inuigalway.ie/A levels. But I would say, to answer your question, Claire, that if there are any specific questions that you have in relation to that, if you actually get in contact with admissions at NUI Galway or even the engineering office at NUI Galway, that they'll be able to advise you on that. But yes, I suppose that, again, to do with the entry requirements and A levels over the last year, things have been a little bit strange, I guess, in terms of COVID and great inflation, particularly down here in the Republic of Ireland as well, which may or may not carry over to the situation outside of the Republic of Ireland. Okay, so I think actually literally with about 30 seconds to spare, I think that concludes this presentation. But indeed on the portal, feel free to ask any additional questions or indeed to make contact with me at a later stage, and I'll be delighted to help you. So thank you very much for attending, and it was very nice to present to you. Cheers, thanks.